holiday treats and feast, molasses cookies for Santa. It was 2 days before Christmas in 1942, and my mom, Eleanor, had been saving her ration coupons for weeks just so we could make a batch of cookies. I was 5 that year, too small to reach the counter without a chair, but old enough to know that cookies were a rare treat. She tied one of her flour sack aprons around my waist, the strings wrapping around me twice, and slid the big mixing bowl in front of us. Mom pulled a well-worn recipe from the tin where she kept her favorites. The edges were smudged from years of use, the handwriting a little faded but still clear. She taped and tapped the card with her finger and smiled at me. "All right, Sarah," she said. "Let's read this recipe so we know what we need." Old-fashioned molasses cookies. Half a cup of shortening, half a cup of sugar, 1 egg, 3/4 cup molasses, 1/4 cup of milk, 2 3/4 cup of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, half a teaspoon of baking soda, 3/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of ginger, and finally a half a teaspoon of salt. Cream the shortening and sugar together. Add beaten egg, molasses, milk, and mix well. Sift dry ingredients together and add to the first mixture and mix well. Drop by teaspoons onto a greased baking sheet and flatten with the back of a spoon. Bake it in a 350-degree Fahrenheit oven for about 11 minutes. Transfer after they have cooled after 2 minutes. Then take them out of the oven. When the recipe card propped against a flour canister, we began measuring each ingredient with care. A half a cup of sugar, a half a cup of shortening, and the dark syrup of molasses that poured slowly and stickily into the bowl. Mom moved carefully, measuring every bit as though it were gold, and I stirred with both hands on the wooden spoon. She continued adding the ingredients until it was all in the bowl. My arms grew tired, but I didn't want to stop. "These cookies aren't just for us," Mom reminded me. "We'll share them with the neighbors, and of course, we'll save a plate for Santa." I didn't like the sound of that. Cookies were rare, and the smell already had me wishing that we could keep every single one of them. "I think we should eat them for ourselves," I whispered, licking a dab of dough from my finger. Mom set down the spoon and crouched so her face was level with mine. "Sarah, these will mean more because they weren't easy to make. That's the gift. Not just the taste of the cookies, but the thought that they were made especially for them." The first tray went into the oven, and the smell spread throughout the whole house, rich and sweet. I pressed my nose against the oven door and asked every other minute, "Are they ready yet?" When Mom finally set the cookies on the counter, they crackled as they cooled. She let me taste one while it was still warm. Chewy, spicy, sweet, perhaps the best thing I had ever eaten. Which is why when she reached for the tin and said we needed to wrap them up, I shook my head and refused. "Santa has plenty," I argued, "and the neighbors won't know they came from us." Mom only smiled softly. "They'll know someone thought of them, and that's what matters most." We wrapped small bundles in brown paper and tied them with bits of ribbon Mom had saved from last year. I carried the first package across the snowy yard to Miss Harper's porch. She opened the door, cardigan buttoned tight, and when she saw the cookies, her eyes filled with tears. "For me?" she asked. I nodded and slipped my hand into my mom's. That was the moment I started to understand. Back home, Mom and I chose the best cookies for Santa, so I could set them on a plate by the tree with a glass of milk. I still wished we could have kept them all, but I felt proud too. I didn't fully understand it then, but my mom's lessons stayed with me. Sometimes the giving is sweeter than the keeping. Merry Christmas from the Paawz house. See you tomorrow.